One of the most mentioned groups when it comes to creativity and experimentation is undoubtedly Outkast. They created strong conceptual albums with vivid, playful, and thoughtful lyricism that transported their listeners to completely new worlds. Outkast have a very strong discography, but of all their albums, Speakerboxxx and The Love Below is considered one of the most successful albums in hip-hop, so much so that it was the last one to win a Grammy for Album of the Year. Although I feel like hip-hop has been snubbed many times in that regard. In this video, I'm going to break down and analyze the sonically cinematic and theatrical world of Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, specifically looking at how it challenged the hypermasculine, materialistic, and performative norms that dominated early 2000s hip-hop by channeling vulnerability. Outkast is a duo from Atlanta, Georgia, comprised of Big Boi and Andre 3000. They met and formed Outkast in high school shortly after realizing their mutual love for music. Influenced by Southern culture, funk, and hip-hop, they brought their music to life after meeting and working with legendary producers Organized Noise, and then later forming the Dungeon Family. After their success hit Players Ball, Outkast debuted their 1994 album, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music, which went platinum. They continued to experiment and grow their sound, releasing unique albums while embracing Southern rap and bringing forth concepts that challenge the creative boundaries in hip-hop. Their fifth studio album, Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, was released in September 2003 by Arista Records. Originally, Speakerboxxx and The Love Below was meant to be two separate solo albums, Speakerboxxx to have been Big Boi's debut album and The Love Below being Andre 3000's, but due to time constraints and management, the duo joined their projects together into one double album. It would take a lot of time for me to list the countless awards and certifications that Speakerboxxx and The Love Below received. However, as mentioned previously, it is infamous for being one of the only two hip-hop albums to ever win a Grammy for Album of the Year, alongside Lauryn Hill's The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Speakerboxxx and The Love Below was released while hip-hop was at its commercial peak. I talked about this in my Bone Thugs video, but in the late 90s, dance rap hits that incorporated R&B, pop features, and lyrics focusing on flaunting material wealth were very popular. However, commercial hip-hop in the late 90s versus the 2000s was a bit different. A year after the whole Y2K apocalypse end of the world scare, the Twin Towers dropped, one of the most significant and traumatic events in modern American history. Post 9/11, US media, especially music, significantly shifted. American media in the 2000s was loud, offensive, crude, sexual, violent, and very in your face. For hip-hop in particular, all those catchy dance rap songs from the late 90s shifted to a new era of what I like to call glamorized gangster rap, where hip-hop went back to being as tough as it was in the mid-90s, but in the most exuberant ways possible. The 2000s glamorized gangster rapper was less political, focused less on community, and brought conceptual focus to the self. Lyrics emphasized excess, material wealth, violence, and themes of homophobia and misogyny. Artists like 50 Cent, who basically ruled the early 2000s, and Eminem began to thrive, as their sound and style were equally unapologetic, offensive, cocky, domineering, and hypermasculine. All characteristics that suited the position that America was trying to convey on a worldwide scale through their media, basically as a force to be reckoned with. But another thing was happening in hip-hop around this time. Southern rap and its subgenres like crunk were gaining rapid popularity, offering audiences a new variety in sounds, style, and lyrical content. Southern rap is also quite patriotic in the sense that it celebrates Southern culture, its history, and style. And the genre is audience and dance-oriented, contrasting against the glamorized gangster rapper who was self-focused. Both elements of patriotism and audience orientation fared very well post 9/11 when society had low morale, was stressed, and was looking for ways to unite. Throughout the 90s, Southern rap groups such as the Ghetto Boys, UGK, Goody Mob, and of course Outkast began to evolve Southern rap, building its unique sound, voice, and style. With the success of Aquemini and Stankonia, Outkast were positioned as leaders in innovating hip-hop sound. Their albums are experimental, their lyrics are filled with clever wordplay, with odes to Southern slang and funk, and not to mention their music videos and style were just as unique and outerworldly as their sound. 3 years post the success of Stankonia, and amidst rumors of their disbandment, the duo released Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, a double album that used visual, theatrical, and conceptual storytelling methods to explore what a lot of hip-hop artists were avoiding in the early 2000s, vulnerability. Before I speak about the themes of this album, I do want to give some context about how vulnerability was generally expressed in hip-hop during the 90s and 2000s. Hip-hop is a vulnerable genre, as many of the themes and stories its artists share deal with racism, poverty, and trauma. Opening up about these topics is difficult, but it's also what makes hip-hop authentic and deeply emotional. However, during the late 80s and 90s political/gangster rap era, when topics were vulnerable, the tone and delivery were anything but that. Gangster rappers opted to speak about these topics with a hard or cold demeanor, since being considered soft was seen as a weakness or gay. For example, in Hold Your Head, my favorite Biggie song, Biggie literally talks about wanting to commit suicide, yet delivers this confession emotionlessly. Tupac, known for emotional storytelling, approached vulnerable topics with a dissonant narrative, framing them as struggles to be overcome. Rarely were these songs delivered in first person while being simultaneously sonically emotional. They were usually either cold and unfazed or narrative and triumphant. Kevin Quashie, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, a professor in Black American Studies, wrote about the neutered notion of vulnerability in Black culture due to systemic violence against Black people. He states that vulnerability, rather seen as necessary, becomes a liability to Black survival. Ta-Nehisi Coates also described that the toughness a lot of Black men attach to is the need to exhibit your power in that sort of way that is really to ward off other people because you're afraid of what could actually happen to you. Through this lens, it's clear to see why vulnerability was generally difficult to express in hip-hop. In a systemically racist country like the US, being openly emotional could literally cost Black Americans and other minorities their lives. On top of that, the pressures of masculinity push men towards emotional suppression, which in turn bottlenecks creativity. Eminem is an emotional rapper. He raps about his family, kids, etc. But Eminem is white, and even though he grew up poor, his whiteness allowed him to express himself more open and vulnerably without a second thought. Before Eminem got big, he received more flack for being white and grotesque than for rapping about emotional topics. If anything, he was celebrated for his vulnerability rather than put down for it. And this reaction was never extended towards Black rappers, especially at the scale at which Eminem received from non-Black audiences. Vulnerability in hip-hop remained cold, tough, or third person until the genre began to shift. The incorporation of R&B in the late 90s, along with the growing presence of women in hip-hop, expanded its emotional range. And of course, artists like Outkast, who fused singing rap styles and genre experimentation, pushed hip-hop beyond the gangster image. Speakerboxxx and The Love Below is one of the most significant albums to do so. My biggest pet peeve when people talk about Speakerboxxx and The Love Below is that there's usually too much focus on what was going on between Outkast as a group than there is on the album itself. Also, I feel like people focus too much on what differentiates both sides of the album versus what connects them, taking away from the full impact of the project. Although both sides of the album do sound different, Big Boi and Andre 3000 created their own cinematic universes using theatrical storytelling and complex characters. As you follow each of their characters along in their respective albums, such as Big Boi's Mac character through Sir Lucius and Andre's Loverboy character, you discover their ambitions and feelings that relate to various themes, which expose larger societal issues. Both parts of this album reveal that conforming to societal molds, whether that's performative masculinity or in relationships, leads to never-ending cycles of unhappiness. And the only escape is through embracing vulnerability. The first theme that explores this is performance versus authenticity. Like I mentioned briefly, we follow certain characters that are revealed in both projects. Speakerboxxx introduces the listener to Sir Lucius, a moniker Big Boi uses throughout his career. In Speakerboxxx, Sir Lucius takes the role of the stereotypical Mac/pimp that is significantly popular in Southern culture, but could also be used to satirically mirror the glamorized gangster rapper that was popular in the early 2000s, because both personas share similar values. For example, both focus on the self, material wealth, women as sexual objects to signify status, and of course, looking cool. Bowtie is the most obvious song on the album that formally introduces us to Sir Lucius, pointing out his values and motivations. Right after plays The Way You Move, which welcomes the listener into Sir Lucius's fantasies, dancing provocatively with women who work at an auto shop. In The Love Below, we follow an unnamed character who is a bit of a player or a lover boy. Despite his hesitancy and wavering feelings between being in love or being ice cold, he finds himself in a number of different relationships, women, and love scenarios. Big Boy and Andre 3000 battle with both these identities that society traditionally celebrates, being a Mac/pimp or an ice cold player, only to ultimately find feelings of emptiness and unfulfillment beneath them. In Speakerboxxx, Rooster, which is all about family and fatherhood, War, and Church, all exemplify how this performative Mac/pimp persona falls short when it comes to real-life responsibilities and challenges. In The Love Below, Dracula's Wedding, She Lives in My Lap, and Hey Ya reveal the feelings of emptiness in performative love and relationships. Andre 3000 also wanted to go against the nonchalant attitude towards love that was prevalent in hip-hop. In a 2014 XXL interview, he shared, "I was just going for some kind of relationship honesty. In rap, we have this thing where you build up this steel exterior like you don't care. We pimpin', we players." So The Love Below was an anti-response to that. I was going for a different take on the bravado of rap to show a more affected character. I wanted to be raw and bring things up, appeal to how people think for real, like the morning after two strangers that have been intimate. What they're really thinking right after is often different from how they're acting. Acting the part and doing things because society has conditioned you to believe they are desirable will inevitably lead you to unhappiness and dissatisfaction. Big Boy and Andre 3000 add complexity to their characters and album storylines through tracks that show their effort in trying to fight against these expectations, only to fall back into their old behaviors and conformities. In Speakerboxxx, Unhappy, one of the most important tracks on the album, literally explains the shallowness in chasing material and social status. Sir Lucius admits that shallow distractions like materialism or alcoholism won't bring him true joy or solve his problems. The chorus soberingly admits, "Might as well have fun cause your happiness is done and your goose is cooked," inferring you might as well give in to your guilty pleasures because whether you do or don't, you're going to be unhappy anyways. To which leads into the next track, Bowtie, where Sir Lucius retreats from the realizations discussed in Unhappy and indulges back into his addictive yet shallow desires, clubbing, his appearance, material, and women. You could say Unhappy serves as a mirror to the coping mechanisms and performative behaviors that Sir Lucius is stuck in, especially in tracks like The Way You Move and Rooster. The final tracks, Last Call and the Bowtie Postlude, bring us full circle. Despite the lessons discussed in Church, War, and Knowing, Sir Lucius, by the end of the album, is still seemingly focused on the Mac lifestyle and his shallow desires, leaving the listener to question if he's truly changed or if he succumbed back into the cycle he's tried to break free from. Nonetheless, this theme exposes the difficulties in trying to escape from these addictive lifestyles that are encouraged by society. Reset is a significant track in the album that reaffirms this theme. Similarly, in The Love Below, the God interlude, Where Are My Panties, leading into Prototype, Spread, and She Lives in My Lap allude to the main character seemingly opening up to love and being in a relationship. In She Lives in My Lap, he recognizes his lover's devotion but retreats into emotional distance, especially with the following tracks being Hey Ya and Roses. After praying for a lover in the God interlude and questioning if the woman he met in Spread was the one in Where Are My Panties, the main character's efforts to find a lover dissipate as he comes face to face with his fear of intimacy, commitment, and fitting into constructed relationship roles. He rejects and points out the hypocrisies in modern-day relationships, choosing to stay ice cold. However, even after the tracks where he challenges relationships like Hey Ya and Roses, he still continuously explores love, like in Behold a Lady, Pink and Blue, Dracula's Wedding, and Love and War. Just like in Speakerboxxx, the Love Below reveals the difficulty in trying to break out of toxic relationship cycles that are fueled by society's expectations and structures, which ultimately leave people unsure if they're really in love or if love even makes them happy at all. None of the prior themes I mentioned could have been explored if Big Boy and Dre had not channeled vulnerability. In Speakerboxxx, vulnerability is expressed through the notion of karma, and most importantly, owning up to one's mistakes. Reset, Knowing, and Church encourage listeners to think twice before their actions, and that chasing shallow desires through sin can come back to bite them. Wealth and fame are always seen as desirable, but this was further amplified in early 2000s hip-hop as the genre was reaching high commercial success. Thus, Big Boy promotes the act of vulnerably admitting shortcomings or mistakes as a form of repentance and honesty. Otherwise, you can get trapped in a cycle of negative behavior like chasing superficial desires that could cost you your life, your home life, or health. Andre 3000 does the same in The Love Below, except he channels vulnerability by opening up about his feelings surrounding love, relationships, and commitment. Andre liberates himself from the limiting, cold player persona that is advocated for in hip-hop by expressing his feelings and emotions vulnerably. He explores many topics that weren't common, like masturbation and Vibrate, age gap relationships in Pink and Blue, and letting go of being cool and Take Off Your Cool. He didn't just do this lyrically, but also by pushing genre barriers, experimenting sonically, and of course through his eclectic style. In an interview with The Guardian, Andre explained, "In hip-hop, people don't talk about their vulnerable or sensitive side a lot because we're trying to keep it real or be tough. They think it makes them look weak. That's what The Love Below means. That bubbling under feeling that people don't like to talk about, that dudes try to cover up with machismo." Outkast's work is anything but keeping it real. In a journal titled Beyond Keeping It Real, Outkast, the Funk Connection, and Afrofuturism, author Howard Ramsey wrote, "Black creative life has too often been determined by this impulse to keep it real." Sociologist Alondra Nelson has explained, "In order to be taken seriously, we have fostered and encouraged a long tradition of social realism in our cultural production, and we fear that to stop keeping things real was to lose the ability to recognize and protest the very real inequities in the social world. The problem," Nelson points out, "is that we created a cultural environment often hostile to speculation, experimentation, and abstraction. Images of thugs, gangsters, hustlers, and ex-cons are prevalent in discourses on hip-hop and black men. Less prevalent are narratives about the creative and intellectual development of musical artists, and the processes by which they experiment with, develop, and solidify distinct styles of artistic production." This idea echoes throughout Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, as both Big Boy and Andre 3000 exemplify how the Mac, pimp, or player persona upholds a front that suppresses emotions, vulnerability, and authenticity. Both Speakerboxxx and The Love Below share similar messages and criticisms over assimilation. If you try to follow what society tells you to be, a Mac/pimp obsessed with material, looks, and social status, or with what society tells you to do, be a dismissive, nonchalant, cold player, you will inevitably find yourself lost trying to find true happiness in a cycle designed to keep you continuously unfulfilled. The whole message of Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, like their past albums, complements and adds to Outkast's overall ethos since their debut. Not following what others are doing and not trying to fit in or do something that isn't authentic to who you really are. There are 44 tracks on this album, so I'm not gonna do a full lyrical analysis, but I do want to talk about some songs that help reinforce the themes I just discussed. If anyone is curious, I will have a full lyrical analysis of this album on my website if I get it done by the time I post this video. Starting with my favorite track, Ghetto Music is an erratic and hyper song that features legendary Patti LaBelle. This song discusses the struggles of breaking into the industry, fitting in, and gaining recognition, especially coming from the South. I'm not sure if anyone else has made this connection, but I think this music video is loosely inspired by the 1991 Atlanta film Living Large. The film follows a delivery boy who dreams of becoming a reporter. Once he makes it, the news/TV industry begins to change him. He loses his accent and starts to talk and dress differently. He realizes that success comes with the cost of selling out. With this, we can infer that Ghetto Music is also a critique of fitting into fame or the music industry. From their debut, Outkast and Southern artists generally struggled with fitting in and gaining appreciation for their regional and innovative styles. And just like how Big Boy continues to do his job in the music video without receiving proper thanks, Outkast continued to create unique albums even if they were unsure if audiences would like them or not. The only customer that showed appreciation to Big Boy was Patti LaBelle's character, symbolically representing a motherly figure, meaning that even if others don't appreciate Outkast, they know they have a place where they'll be understood and loved, back home in Atlanta or the South. I also want to point out that the track's title spells music as music, maybe insinuating that the music industry or fame is making him feel sick, or he's sick of it, or maybe he feels homesick. Rooster is a vivid song where, through narrative storytelling and metaphors, Big Boi opens up about the difficulties in balancing life as an artist while raising a family. Big Boi shares his anxieties and pressures of having to perform as a father, symbolically communicated through a rooster. Alongside the actual rooster noises, the chorus describes how roosters stick their necks and backs out, similarly to how men stick their chests out to look strong or tough. Roosters are also the fathers in a family of hens, another indication that this song is about fatherhood. Although this track didn't have an official music video, it was performed later in Idlewild, where Big Boi plays the character Rooster, referencing back to Speakerboxxx. The red bow tie also looks like the wattles that roosters have underneath their beaks, meaning that Big Boi, Sir Lucius, or Rooster in Idlewild is the rooster reference in the song. Family continues as a motif throughout Speakerboxxx, especially in Bamboo's interlude, where we see a literal example of how Big Boi's family life bleeds into his career. The interlude is of Bamboo, Big Boi's son, trying to rap one of his verses. Knowing, also considered the Art of Storytelling Part 3, is one of the most depressing songs on Speakerboxxx that tells the story of Wanda. Wanda is a sex worker chasing materialism. The song narrates how she sleeps with a married man and steals his watch until he finds her the next day to retrieve what was stolen. The song doesn't directly tell us what happens to Wanda, but through contextual clues and how the song progresses sonically, we can infer that Wanda doesn't have a happy ending. The themes of this song echo the ones previously discussed in Church regarding karma. If you act immorally, karma will eventually get you. The focus on how Wanda spends her money on grand material items repeats the message from Unhappy about how having nice things doesn't solve unhappiness, and that shallow consumption leads to negative, addictive habits that could harm you. The interesting aspect about this song is that while the chorus repeats how everyone in Wanda's community knows about what she does, the listener gets a gist of that as well, making them an active part of the story. Knowing what will eventually happen to Wanda and knowing they can't do anything to help either. Reset is another one of my favorite tracks on Speakerboxxx. It's introspective, thought-provoking, and explores existentialist themes. Big Boi begins by explaining that our lives are already set the day we are conceived, meaning that our future is largely dependent on the environment in which we are born. He empathizes with how lonely it can be without a support system and how easy it is to fall into a downward path of crime or addiction. The end of his verse criticizes the prison system, stating that imprisoning someone for their actions and then simply letting them out after serving time isn't a solution. He emphasizes the need for proper rehabilitation programs, or else people will fall back into their old ways, later exemplified in the bow tie postlude. This links back to the message Big Boi has repeated multiple times through Speakerboxxx. Sinful habits or lifestyles will trap you in cycles of unhappiness or karma. In this case, Big Boi is relating this to people being freed from prison, but it could also apply to anyone struggling with any form of addiction. Speakerboxxx concludes with one more dance track. In Last Call, Sir Lucius encourages everyone to stop acting cool, let go, and dance. This song, just like Bow Tie, is another club-type song about looking good and getting women, but with ad-libs from Little John. The significance of Last Call, a reference to the final call for drinks at a club before closing, being the last song, is that Sir Lucius, even after all the introspective and vulnerable tracks, still finds himself at the club yet again repeating his same old habits, partying, drinking, and trying to impress women. Thus, the overall theme and message of Speakerboxxx comes full circle. The struggle of self-liberating from expectations, addictive lifestyles, and performative identities. In the bow tie postlude, we can hear Sir Lucius yet again boasting about himself and his looks. It's unclear if he's learned his ways or if he'll fall back into his previous cycles, but even if he has or hasn't, at least he looks good. Love Hater sets a tone for the Love Below. Immediately, the track emphasizes that people should drop their nonchalant, I don't care about love attitude because everyone, regardless of who they are, craves love and companionship. You could also perceive this track as satire, mocking people who pressure others to get into a relationship before it's too late or they get too old. The God interlude is where we are loosely introduced to the main character of the Love Below. This interlude confirms message in Love Hater. Deep down, everyone wants someone to love and receive love from. This is the first instance where we see the main character open up vulnerably about his desires and shortcomings. But the point is, he can only do so when he speaks privately to God. Otherwise, in front of others, he plays it cool. As a reward for his honesty though, God tells him that she's found someone for him. Next plays Valentine's Day, where we are introduced to a new character, Cupid Valentino. In this track, Cupid Valentino expresses his frustrations against people, presumably cool players like our main character, who claims to not believe in love and has a distaste for Valentine's Day. Cupid mocks them, claiming that it's hypocritical to so easily believe in folklore like leprechauns, groundhogs, Santa, etc., but not love. Valentino says, regardless of how guarded you are, ultimately love conquers all, meaning inevitably you will fall in love at some point. The specific lines, "when arrows don't work, he grabs a pistol," are a play off of Cupid's traditional bow and arrows. In this case, Cupid Valentino carries a pistol instead. On the album cover, Andre 3000 is also presumably dressed as Cupid Valentino, posing with said pistol. There is a remark on how he finds it difficult to understand love, especially without fully knowing someone, revealing how deeply guarded his character is. He has a fear of vulnerability, but a desire for intimacy. Above all, though, he struggles with understanding what he truly wants. The song ends with a chorus that wavers between celebrating Valentine's Day and hating it, emphasizing this indecisiveness. After Valentine's Day, our main character finally meets the woman that God promised him, and just like how Cupid Valentino predicted, he quickly falls for her. The track Spread describes this encounter, but the song can be interpreted in different ways. One is the obvious, spreading legs to have sex, and the other is spreading in the sense of opening up emotionally or vulnerably. Spread is insanely visual, as you can hear through many sound effects how the characters' interactions develop from them meeting to speeding home to have sex. Where Are My Panties is a small interlude but a significant piece of the album. It reveals the inner thoughts of the main character and the woman he slept with from Spread. The inner dialogue from each character adds depth and relatability, since this is probably a scenario that many adults have been in at one point in their lives. While their thoughts are relatable, they echo the ones that are instilled by society, like being a hoe for having sex on the first night. Luckily, they immediately dismiss these thoughts, showing the listener that many of these socially constructed ideas are usually fueled by overthinking. A voice, maybe the main character's subconscious, yells in the background, "Ice cold." It chimes in like an alarm, warning our MC to remain cool, guarded, and avoidant when he begins to wonder if the woman he's just slept with is possibly the one. Prototype then opens with a soft, melodic, funk, Prince-inspired sound. This song is all about falling in love again. However, indecisiveness plagues the lyrics as the possibility of breaking up is still mentioned. But even if things do inevitably end, the character acknowledges that he now at least has a better sense of what he wants in an ideal partner. Otherwise, this is a sweet love song that perfectly matches the honeymoon stage in dating, where people fantasize about a future together even if they are unsure about how it'll go. Sonically, there is a dreamy, outer-worldly sensation to this track that makes it sound like the character is floating off into a love utopia, which suits the futuristic music video perfectly. Things seem to be running smoothly as we, the listeners, now assume that our main character has ascended into this dream world of love and romance. However, things start to take a turn and She Lives in My Lap. As a fellow Prince lover, I absolutely adore this track, and it is my favorite off of The Love Below. She Lives in My Lap is a very conflicting song inspired by Prince's She's Always in My Hair, a song about a woman who shows love, devotion, and loyalty, but Prince only finds her irritating. She Lives in My Lap carries similar themes. There is a pitiful, hypnotic undertone to this song, as if someone is stuck in their head about something. Sonically, there are hints of psychedelic rock and funk that further emphasize this hypnotic feeling. Given that this song is inspired by She's Always in My Hair, you can infer that the woman in She Lives in My Lap shows the same amount of love and devotion, but her loyalty also triggers inner conflict in our main character, just like it did to Prince. Our main character seems uncomfortable, and his uncertainty concerning love shrouds the whole song. For example, using the word lap could refer to his crotch, meaning that what he feels for her is mainly lust instead of love. Or else the line could have been, "She lives in my heart." The lines "don't leave, don't stay" are another indicator of the MC's inner conflict about what he truly wants. The lines "forever my fiance" could mean that the relationship might never escalate to the point of full commitment, like marriage. Prince sings a similar line in "She's Always in My Hair." Maybe I'll marry her, maybe I won't, maybe will not, reinforcing uncertainty and a back and forth attitude about the future of the relationship. Finally, there's a sample from fellow Southern artist The Ghetto Boys, "Mind Playing Tricks on Me." The lines "I had a woman down" repeat during the outro. Scarface's verse from that sample describes how he had a girl who was loyal to him, but because he didn't take her seriously, she eventually left him. And once she did, he realized he loved her. Those lyrics, "Now I'm realizing that I love her," repeat in the outro to "She Lives in My Lap." In the intro, the love interest asks what's wrong, and what our MC is afraid of. The following answer, "The Love Below," is both a nod to the album title and our main character's fears. His inner desire for love trapped beneath societal pressure. The main character is aware of his strong feelings, but is too afraid to be vulnerable enough to let someone in. In this case, the lyrics "come inside" have another meaning outside of their sexual connotations, to let someone in emotionally. The next track to play is the infamous and globally loved "Hey Ya." I was 6 years old dancing to this song happily in my bedroom, and now I'm 30 and this song is a little bit more relatable than I would like it to be now. Yeah, it kind of leaves a little bit of a melancholic taste in my mouth. Yeah, it's weird to see how much I've grown up with this song after all this time and how I've changed with it. Hey Ya challenges love and conventional relationships, claiming that people feel obligated to be in a relationship due to societal expectations, even if they aren't happy or truthfully in love. In a 2013 Huffington Post interview, Andre 3000 explained Hey Ya as a story that was set in the 50s. The song was me trying to do a Woody Allen kind of thing, a humorous kind of honesty. He approaches the song comically, poking fun at society's hypocrisies rather than bluntly criticizing it. The lines "if nothing lasts forever, then what makes love the exception" frame love nihilistically, asking why people feel the need to be in love when everything inevitably ends. The struggle that our main character experienced in "She Lives in My Lap" dissipates as he regresses into his comfort zone, being a cold player. This transformation is solidified once our main character calls for the audience to get up and dance. He calls out to the men, "What's cooler than being cool? Ice cold," reminiscent of the ice cold shout from "Where Are My Panties?" Although one might believe that the main character is finally being honest and decisive, he still struggles with being truthfully open. He's only able to express himself when it's masked over a super rhythmic dance song. It's more difficult for the listener to grasp the actual meaning of the lyrics when they are distracted by the contagiously addictive beat. The lines, "Why are we so in denial when we know we're not happy here?" reflect the sonic nature of the song. People can easily get up, dance, and distract themselves from their problems rather than confront how they truly feel. This is further supported by the lines, "Y'all don't want to hear me, y'all just want to dance." People would rather delude themselves in so-called happiness through love and relationships without looking within and questioning if those things truly make them happy. This same idea is explored in Speakerboxxx, but it questions whether fame and material provide that happiness. There is one last thing I want to point out. In the 2013 Huffington Post interview, Andre explained, "Hey Ya is pretty much about the state of relationships in the 2000s. It's about some people who stay together in relationships because of tradition, because somebody told them, you guys are supposed to stay together, but you pretty much end up being unhappy for the rest of your life." I think there is an underlying message in criticism about how easily society is influenced and how the media sells a false narrative about love and relationships. The way audiences immediately get up and dance during the "shake it like a Polaroid" part and the lines "you know what to do" show how easy it is for audiences to follow instructions once given to them, without realizing what they're actually dancing to. The music video recreates the Beatles' 1964 performance of "I Wanna Hold Your Hand" from The Ed Sullivan Show. I found it interesting that Andre recreated the Beatles. As we all know, they were extremely popular and had immense global influence, particularly with teenage girls. They sang romance songs, selling listeners the idea of everlasting love. He also redid a broadcast linking to the use of televisions, which in the early 2000s was the most powerful medium to influence society. The clips of the family at home, especially the kids dancing, show how easily impressionable audiences are, and that these messages are fed to society from a young age. Sometimes I wonder if Roses like Hey Ya is not what it seems to be. It's almost like it's mocking the songs that were popular in 2000s hip-hop. Despite many rap artists flaunting their wealth, they did paint women as gold diggers while sexually objectifying them. Whether women were using men for their money or men were using women for their bodies, no one was truthfully pursuing love. Rather for ego, pride, appearances, which again are fueled by society's expectations and ideals. But I don't know, Roses could honestly just be about gold diggers. Take Off Your Cool is another one of my favorite songs off of Love Below and one of the most vulnerable. It points back to the ice cold and cool behavior that is referenced throughout the album as a shield from vulnerability and opening up. The term cool was first coined in relevance to jazz artists in the 40s. Amiri Baraka's Blues People explain the term cool as a specific reaction to the world, a specific relationship to one's environment. To be cool was to be calm, even unimpressed. His ability to be cool, to be calm, unimpressed, detached. In an irrational world, the most legitimate relationship to it is non-participation. In this sense, to take off your cool is to let go of your attitude, stop acting uninterested or unimpressed, and embrace honesty and vulnerability. The chorus for Take Off Your Cool is mellow, calming, and promotes this feeling of letting your guard down. It's performed by Norah Jones and Andre 3000, representing that both men and women exhibit this cool behavior, and should equally let them go to improve relationships. Dracula's Wedding is a really fun track. From the start, we're hit with a traditional, scary sounding instrumental as Andre expresses his fears of commitment and vulnerability by telling a story of him depicted as Dracula getting married. Despite Dracula being a horrifying, cold figure, he's terrified of commitment. Khalees, who plays the woman's voice in the track, recites eerie wedding vows, further emphasizing the haunting prospects of marriage. Since vampires are immortal, the final lines imply that Andre perceives marriage or commitment as a lifelong sentence. Andre 3000 has expressed in multiple interviews about his reluctancy towards traditional relationships. In an interview with the New York Times, he shared, "Isn't marriage cutting you off from the rest of the world and the experiences you can have with other people? Aren't you putting boundaries on yourself?" Andre's feelings towards marriage can be a reason why indecisiveness, skepticism, and even avoidance echo throughout the Love Below. Throughout the album, there are some reoccurring motifs. Cars. This is more prevalent in Speakerboxxx, but also not surprising. Cars are a huge part of Southern/Mac/pimp culture. Given that Big Boy uses the Mac persona through Sir Lucius, it's no surprise that you'll find multiple lyrical and visual references to cars throughout the album. Movies. There are direct lyrical mentions to movies throughout Speakerboxxx and a few mafia/gangster references as it relates to Mac culture and the party lifestyle that Sir Lucius is entangled in. Ghetto music, as mentioned previously, could be inspired by Living Large, and the music video for Roses takes inspiration from Grease and West Side Story, given the high school setting and rivalry concept. Finally, Andre 3000 shared in the Rick Rubin podcast that Prototype was a riff off Space is the Place by Sun Ra, especially given its Afrofuturistic and outer-worldly aesthetics. Women. In Speakerboxxx, women are symbolically used to signify social status and success. However, in the Love Below, because the album revolves around love and relationships, women are a more significant motive. Andre 3000 included many women, from artists, voice actors, even his own mom, to play significant roles as his characters' love interests. He also shared that he was inspired by many women musicians while making the Love Below. For example, in an interview with NPR in 2014, he mentioned that Aretha Franklin's Say a Little Prayer helped in the creation of Hey Ya. War is a prominent motive, especially at the time of the album's release, post 9/11 and the Iraq invasion. Big Boy dedicated a song entirely to commenting on and criticizing America's involvement and instigation in the war, and emphasizes how money should have gone towards improving the country instead of terror, while calling out performative rappers who didn't speak about what was happening. Andre 3000 also had his take on war in Love and War. He advocates for conflict resolution in relationships instead of going to war with each other. Finally, war and conflict are conceptually and symbolically instilled in the album. In Roses, the music video depicts rival groups battling over Caroline, and many of the album's themes can be described as war. being at war with oneself, with addictions, with society, with expectations, love, relationships, etc. Speakerboxxx was produced by Big Boi and Dre with help from Mr. DJ, Carl Mo, Cutmaster Swift, and Dojo 5, whereas Love Below was entirely produced by Andre 3000. The biggest differentiator in this album is the sound between Speakerboxxx and the Love Below. However, the approach for making the album was kind of similar. For one, Outkast have always emphasized their preference for creating something new. In an interview with TMR, Big Boi explained, "When we've made the last couple of albums, we never try to reinvent the past. We try to look forward to what's going on." Unlike many artists who repeat what they've seen procure successful results, Outkast embrace innovation. Second, Outkast seemed to have a general distaste for hip-hop's direction in the early 2000s. In an interview with the Rolling Stone, Andre 3000 explained, "I don't like hip-hop these days. There are cool club songs and there's nothing wrong with that, but when I loved it, it was a great album. It was you and your homeboy from the neighborhood with a beat machine. They had their own sound, not one super producer on one track, another on the next track. I love the Neptunes, but I don't want that. Our records may not have the best sound, but it's personal. I wouldn't trade that for a beat from Dr. Dre." Big Boi shared a similar sentiment. "I could be getting one beat from Pharrell, another from someone else. It's like picking out of a wardrobe. But I don't want that. I want my own style." And that's exactly what happened. Both sides of the album reflect the personal sounds and styles that Andre 3000 and Big Boi were feeling at the time. While Speakerboxxx is the more traditional southern hip-hop sounding of the two, it's still pretty experimental in that it incorporates elements from many different genres. Unsurprisingly, because of the Mac persona used thematically, the album is heavily inspired by funk and pulls elements from soul, R&B, and even techno. Unlike Andre 3000, Big Boi sticks to rapping instead of singing. He does, however, feature artists such as Patti LaBelle and Sleepy Brown to weave in soul and R&B. Around the time The Love Below was being made, Andre 3000 had ventured into acting. And as mentioned previously, The Love Below was supposed to be a movie set in France. But even though it couldn't be made, Andre 3000 didn't scrap the idea completely. The Love Below sounds like a theatrical romantic story, mirroring the complex and emotional ups and downs of love and relationships. In a 2014 XXL interview, Andre 3000 shared, "I was going for a melodic presentation that wasn't rap but was edgier than R&B. There's also action in the background, like footsteps or a car door slamming. Since I couldn't film this story, I had to put those sounds into the music." The Love Below is a mix of jazz, pop, techno, R&B, funk, psychedelic rock, experimental sounds, and live instrumentation. There are interludes, characters, sound effects, background noises, and skits that all weave together and engrossing stories surrounding love. The album also brought forward the singing rap style, which later inspired many other artists. Andre 3000 himself explained in a New York Times article that the album was 95% singing and 5% rapping. Andre 3000 shared that he channeled artists such as Anita Baker for She's Alive and Janet Jackson for Prototype. As a result, The Love Below carries feminine sonic qualities which perfectly balance the strong masculine themes present in Speakerboxxx. Which leads to the last point about the sound of the album, how the differentiating aspects between Big Boi and Andre 3000, just like their previous work, make Speakerboxxx and The Love Below such a standout project. Writer Howard Ramsey described, in reference to ATLiens but still applicable here, Andre 3000's move towards breaking artistic boundaries on ATLiens is admirable and refreshing, yet the positive reception of his breakthroughs would have been less possible without Big Boi's recognizable keeping it real ethos. The differences in their sonic style highlight their individuality and balance their unique qualities. Big Boi's more traditional southern rap style grounds the album while Andre 3000 takes flight. I think Andre 3000 described their sound perfectly in this interview.
We have like a little saying, like we like to keep our ears to the street and like our eyes to the sky.
Speakerboxxx and The Love Below would go on to be one of the most influential albums in hip-hop. Like the rest of Outkast's iconic discography, this album further pushes and validates what Outkast have stood for since their beginning: authentic, creative, and innovative expression. From fashion style, aesthetics, instrumentation, experimentation, abstract themes, and expressive forms of creativity, there is something so wildly enigmatic with how Outkast approach music and expression that infectiously inspires everyone who listens to them. Honestly, I think it was them truthfully having fun with the music and being themselves, which for some reason seems to be very difficult to do in the industry. Every artist that's ever created something different or has made an outstanding project in their own discographies usually cites Outkast as one of their sources of inspiration, and it's no surprise that many of these works are grounded in emotional vulnerability. What was once something avoided in hip-hop becomes a catalyst for producing some of the most amazing and authentic albums the genre has seen. Outkast proved that being openly vulnerable is the realest thing anyone can be. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I love Outkast and I love this album. It was one of the first albums I ever grew up listening to, and I wrote 15,000 words on this album alone, so I had a lot to say and delve into. Yeah, I think it might be a long video, but thank you if you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again in another video.